Hello and welcome back everyone to Adobe Live from the sofa here in the UK. And today our guest is Olly. Welcome, Olly. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. And of course we have Emma, my wonderful co-host, and all of you guys in the chat. So again, if you do have any questions, pop them in there and Emma and I will read them out loud to Olly. But let's get started and tell us, who are you, Olly?
I'm Olly. I'm a photographer. I'm based in London. I work largely kind of in the commercial world. I work with a lot of sports brands and kind of other kind of big companies. And my work always revolves around people in places, I guess is the broadest sense.
And how long have you been a photographer for?
I've been freelance as a photographer for about 8 years, but it's kind of since university I studied photography and I did a few weird things and then started assisting and up in full-time for about 8 years.
How did you get into photography? Was it clear for you when you graduated from school that you want to study photography, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was always art and design, drawing as a kid. And I think there came a point when I probably wasn't quite good enough at drawing and painting to make a career out of that. But at the same time, kind of discovered photography. We had a tiny kind of closet dark room at school, and developing black and white prints was just magical. I went on to do a art foundation course where you again experiment in the kind of wider arena of art and design, and it was like, no, photography all the way.
And was London always an obvious place for you to be in terms of creative community, or have you moved around or had the thought to do that?
No, I've been in London since after I graduated. I did a year on a cruise ship, which was interesting.
That's great.
It was up and down, but it was fun. After that I moved to London. It was always kind of London seemed to be the centre, and between here and New York, I think is the hub for in the arena that I work in. So London's very much home.
Interesting. Can we see some of your work?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I don't need to pull the thing out.
And before we start, you have to tell us the story about your logo, because I absolutely love it. And you were just telling us before this that it's personal to you. So tell us a bit.
That's Arnold. Arnold's lucky to have a big network of friends. So when I'm away shooting, he goes and stays with his various aunties and uncles. And this was one of those trips. I was in Barcelona having dinner after a shoot and got a picture on my phone, and his Uncle Barn and Arnold, they were watching Spider-Man in 3D. So the picture came from there, and I had to embrace it as a logo. And now it's literally on everything.
I love it. I'm sure Tony would appreciate the glass prop accessory. We love those, the 3D glasses. But yeah, let's get into your work.
So I just put together kind of an overview of different things. So this is a kind of collection of personal work, which is just, kind of passion projects or experiences or things. Sometimes the personal work is aimed at getting commissions, and sometimes the personal work is, slightly more indulgent or an excuse to go somewhere or meet people or do something out of the ordinary. I think that's, one of the biggest advantages of the job, really. That's Arnold again.
And you have a big focus on people, right? And how do you come across like these kind of communities, and what brought you to this as opposed to, landscape photography or any other subject?
It's just always been my area of interest. I mean, even as a kid, it was always drawing people. I wasn't interested in kind of drawing things or places. It was always people. And so I guess it's always progressed. But as kind of my career's progressed, I've always had the opportunities for this, for example, was in one of the townships outside of Cape Town, a place called Mitchell's Plain. And, we were in the fortunate position where we were there on a job. We had a producer who knew a fixer, who knew a guy that could give us access to the townships, and we could meet people, and we'd be safe, and we'd be able to experience that way of life that, most people don't have the opportunity to. And, when we were in there, these guys were just really, really lovely to us, and we spent a day with them, and it was just a really exciting opportunity. we went back the following year. This was slightly different. We went to meet some ex-gang members and rehabilitated prisoners. And again, you know, I purposely didn't do too much research into the gangs beforehand because I thought it was better not to know. But in that experience and in that environment, everybody was so lovely to us, and it was really nice to kind of have this experience that you wouldn't ordinarily have.
And is that a process that you usually follow? You don't do much research and you kind of let yourself experience those moments, or is researching a big part of, you know, how you approach people and your work?
It's a good question. I think
there's no trick question on here, so don't worry.
I mean, with commercial work, it's always, you know, absolutely prepared everything to a T, and so you know everything going into the shoot, so that when you're actually on the shoot, you can be a bit more reactive and a bit more spontaneous, knowing that every element's in place, and so that you will get the result. Whereas I think I like with something like this, I'd rather experience it firsthand without preconceptions. So actually, everything is new and everything is really exciting. I think that's kind of way I'd like to go into it. Sorry, this is changing completely. A lot of my work is sports based, and I think like photographing people and people doing things, sports is an obvious way, and you get to see some athletes and watching people doing really kind of incredible things. I find really exciting.
Some of your work was actually featured in the British Journal of Photography and the Portrait of Humanity, right? You were featured on there, and it makes sense because this humanity side of your subjects is a big, you know, importance to you. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's a kind of combination of people in their places doing their things and being themselves. I don't like to get too involved with directing people and kind of forcing something or making somebody do something for the sake of a picture. It's very much kind of documenting what they're doing and, you know, how they're doing it in their way. This is a family I was introduced to who, again, just lived just outside Cape Town. And there's mum and dad and 9 children and dog and a cat, and they just live the most idyllic life, and they're all beautiful, and they live in a beautiful house just on the beach, and they live very, very simplistically, but it's they're lovely people, and spending time with them is such a visual treat, and nothing is styled or staged. We just literally hang out with them and take pictures as it goes, and it's just a really fun day.
How hard is it to meet these kind of people that you take pictures of? How do you get in touch with them?
A variety of ways, and I mean that's often the challenge. Certainly, I find it the challenge is finding the subjects and approaching them. And 9 times out of 10, you kind of ask people. I find I ask people, and they're not necessarily interested. But when you do, and you can strike up a rapport, and then it kind of organically develops from there. This is one of my favourite shoots. I went with a charity to Somaliland. It's an aid charity, and we went to deliver aid during the drought. Or I went to document it for them, and while they were delivering aid during the drought, and just the people we met. Again, I think this is the furthest I've ever been from my world and my life. But we sat in the middle of the plains with these people with a translator and just had conversations. And you realise this, you know, fundamentally we're all so similar. But the brief for me with this was strength and hope. And having not been there, I thought that might be quite hard to deliver. And again, like with my work, I don't want to lie. I want to show things how they are. And I thought strength and hope might be really difficult. But as it turned out, the kind of resilience and the optimism of the people really, really was real. And it was so easy to kind of capture that within them. And there he is again.
Wrapping it up. We love him already. We need a mascot.
How many pictures do you usually take until you have the one? Because I assume you're not working with professional models, so how long does it take? Like, I mean, I have people. Okay.
It depends on the shoot. I think normal people are often easier to photograph because you just get them rather than often depends on the commission, but a lot of the time with models we want to create something rather than recreate it. So you want them to be happy, models will tend to have a happy face, whereas actually you genuinely just want to make them happy and then capture that. So that often the process is harder with professionals because you're breaking down the layers in a way, whereas real people just are themselves. So then this, I thought, for context, this is selection of commissioned work, again for various clients, and I think just to demonstrate the link between the two. Yeah, with the sports, it's great photographing. I mean, some of the biggest athletes in the world, and this guy was everything you'd hope he would possibly be. Anthony Joshua, he was the most game and the most fun person. Between shots, we had an intern on the day, and between shots, he was teaching this 16-year-old boxing moves. That's the best day's work experience anyone's ever going to have.
Definitely. Did you pick up any? What's your kind of favorite sport, Ollie? Because I would feel so out of my depth in some of these, and just being able to relate to your photography as well.
I mean, this was frightening. I mean, I'm not a big, I don't really follow boxing, and having him throw punches at me was absolutely terrifying. I'm not going to lie. I'm a football fan, so that helps. Sorry, this was for Airbnb. That was a great commission because they just gave us an apartment in 3 days and just said, go and find stuff. So that was relaxed as commissions come, and just really, really fun.
Where was the Airbnb?
That's in very north of Italy, so the mountains are nice. Switzerland. See, this is James Harden. He was a lot of fun to shoot, and Lionel Messi.
Casually throwing in all these names, I love it. Name dropping.
Yeah.
You're pretty impressive.
I mean, I've always had really, really good experiences. I think footballers have a bad reputation for being difficult, but every experience I've ever had with sports people, they're really willing, and they want to perform, and they want to give you everything. And it's a very different kind of shoot, because often you'll have a lot of time to do a shoot, but with someone like him, he'll be there for an hour tops, and you've got 6 different executions to do in 2 films, and it's a challenge, but it's really exciting.
And Ollie, we already have some questions in the chat. And firstly, great feedback on your images. You know, Brian is saying there's so much life, color, and action. Robert saying fantastic photos so far, loving the movement and color in the photos. And we also have a question from Sarah, who's saying that you're using we and us when you're referring to how you shoot. So who works with you, and what is your process like in producing some of these photos, for example?
Oh, okay. I mean, this is probably a bad example that's on, but generally it's definitely a team effort. So obviously we have a production team who make sure everything in place. Where to start? My immediate team are so important to me. They're the best. So I have my assistants and my digital operator, and they're kind of my eyes and ears as well. And we're quite close. We're very close. We're friends, and they're really good support. They probably watch this. Outside of that, then there'll be hair and makeup, there'll be styling, there'll be a location manager, and yeah. So and then there's an art director that I'll be collaborating with. The idea will have come from an agency, and so we're working closely with them. And so it is a hugely collaborative process, and there's a lot of people, and everybody is vital to making it happen. This one on screen is probably the most extreme example of that. This was for Lexus. I produced a hoverboard 3 or 4 years ago, and it worked, and it was incredible. But we were part of this production. There was probably between 100 and 120 people on set every day, and that was huge TV crew. There were teams with drones, teams with GoPros, cameras everywhere. And then all the crew and all the extras, and it was absolutely huge. They built this skate park in just outside Barcelona, and then everything just unfolded over 5 days, and it was amazing to see. And we were hiding behind things and placing cameras and rigging cameras in various places, and just yeah, really, really exciting.
And do you usually work with the same team, or is it with every setup it's a new team?
It varies. I mean, there's try and work with the same people where possible, but obviously a lot of this, there's a lot of work where it's traveling, so it's unnecessary to fly teams in too much. I'll always travel with an assistant and ideally two. But you know, it depends on budget and depends on brief and where we're going, because obviously some places are hugely set up for big productions and some people you may need to fly in a stylist or a makeup artist.
And we also have James who's asking which cameras do you use, or does it just depend on the shoot for you?
Depends on the shoot to a certain extent, but my go-to is Canon 5DS. They're kind of the perfect balance between high megapixels and they're quick and reactive and they're kind of bulletproof. I'm interested to see what the new mirrorless Canon system is when that comes out, but yeah, 5DS is generally. I mean, I have a couple of other cameras. The project I'm going to do a demo on was shot on this camera, which this part is a 1969 Hasselblad that I bought secondhand off a guy in Cornwall, and digital back on it because I'm far too impatient to shoot film. And then I have a couple of other cameras just to carry around, something that's smaller. But yeah, the bulk of everything you would have seen would be 5DSs.
And how long do these sets take? Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a month?
Depends again. I mean, this was for Age UK. This was we did 1 day in the studio and we did 3 different setups. The hoverboard was 5 days on location of Iceland because there was just so much going on. I mean, you kind of take as long as you need. I think like with the footballers, you've got 45 minutes and you have to do everything in 45 minutes. Whereas if it's not a footballer, you have the same amount of work to do and you've got a day to do it. Yeah, it's sort of a bit of
quite a stark contrast with what you were showing before in terms of your personal work as well. And you're really taking the time to, you know, learn about the person and just even finding them quite organically. So, you know, it seems quite refreshing to also have your personal projects where you can just have the simplicity of being on your own and shooting that and just embracing the stories that come about.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think like they kind of both feed each other. And I think with the personal projects, you have the freedom that you kind of control the process from beginning to end. And so, you know, who you're shooting or where you're shooting them. But when it comes to the final select image that you want to show, that's entirely down to me, and the color grade on it is entirely down to me. And it's nice to have that control. And then you show that to commissioners, and hopefully they'll go off that, and then the commissions come from there. This was end of last year for Nike in Shanghai. So I put this in just an example. We collaborated again through the agency. They got the designers I Love Dust to do these layouts. I think, you know, the photography is one thing, but when you put it like this, it suddenly becomes something else entirely. And then these were all over Shanghai. And just seeing the work in place like that, it's just, I know the photography is kind of a small element of the whole thing, but it's really exciting to see it come together when it does like that.
And do you choose the final shot, or is it the people who put it in the final artwork?
I push for my selections. The final decision will come down to the client and then the art director and the creative team, but I'll always try and influence that, and we'll have discussions about, I'll put together edits and my favorite shots, and we'll have a bit of to and fro, and then we get to the final position.
How many,
have Jackie? Oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
How many pictures do you usually have after such a commission, and how many are in your final selection? It's always interesting, you know, because people don't understand most of the time how much work actually goes into it and how many pictures there were shot, and then in the end it's just the one that's hanging.
Yeah,
poster, right?
I mean, again, it depends, because a lot of the time if it's action, it's a little bit hit and miss, and you have to repeat and shoot more and more pictures. If it's a portrait, you can be a lot more still and you know, get it quicker. But some shoot days we can come back and we've got terabytes, and we've got maybe 10,000 pictures at the end of the day, and that will eventually be whittled down to 5 final shots. I like to kind of, I think the shooting is a process, so I like to you know, where you start in the first 5 minutes of shooting to where you, after an hour or so, and you get that final shot, it's such a process, and you're exploring the angles and the place and getting to know the person, that, you know, it sometimes takes a lot of shots, I think.
So is it usually the last shots of the day which make it into the final ones?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so. I mean, I'd always edit from the most recent shot backwards. But then sometimes, you know, when everything comes together perfectly, you nail the shot in 5 minutes. And then there's just a bit of a performance maybe that you have to justify being there, but you know you've got it in the bag. And I guess then you can be a bit more experimental too.
Nice. And Jackie's asking if you ever leave the house with a camera.
Most of the time I try to, but I mean, again, I'm an iPhone. Like, I've always got my phone with me, and there's so much time that's the camera that I'll have with me most of the time.
Nice. Are you finding the quality all right? Is that something that you like in terms of just being spontaneous and editing as well, or is it just taking the photos?
I think, yeah, I don't think I'd ever use them for anything kind of portfolio-wise, but you know, Instagram and whatnot, I quite like it. But I think more than anything, it's just a visual diary. I have a huge habit of just typing in a date into my phone and then seeing where I was at that point for the last 8 years. And having that, and that's that camera, I think it's really quite amazing.
How are you finding this time right now? Are you looking through a lot of this content that you've taken now that we're all home, or are you kind of frustrated you can't travel, or how are you dealing with all of this? I guess the diary idea is quite nice to look back on, and we're all doing this archive hunting.
Yeah, I think time will tell. I think looking back at this year in a few years' time will really be quite bizarre. It is difficult not being able to travel and not being able to, because of my work's obviously people in places, and those are the two things I can't do right now. But I don't feel too much pressure just to make work for the sake of it. I think I'm quite enjoying just a bit of peace, and I'm writing a lot and things. I don't feel that I need to be out taking pictures. But I do miss it. I definitely miss it, and I miss the kind of work aspect of it and the collaboration side.
Or do you maybe change the subject and, I don't know, go to your studio and take pictures of stills or your dog or something like that?
I've got so many pictures of this dog, but my agent, they don't like that. They see too many pictures of him. I have, let me see if I can find this quickly. Because I've been walking, I find the repetition of this.
I love that you have a lockdown folder in your desktop. This is such a great organization.
It's really not as organized as it looks, I promise.
Very impressed.
through the repetition there, because of lockdown and restrictions of lockdown, and having a dog, we walk the block every day, and I kind of noticed all these basketball hoops that I hadn't really paid attention to before, and because we hadn't been doing the same route. So this is what I've been playing with at the moment. But
so this is recent, right? Or is it? Is this kind of out? This is recent work that you've just
this is
shooting in London.
Probably the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice.
Just
because we had a question.
Camera.
We had a question from Stuart, who's asking if you've been doing this kind of just spontaneous, popping out into the empty streets and seeing what you can get. So nice to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is exactly it. I think I don't really feel the need to kind of document. I mean, I'll probably regret it in a year's time, but I don't really feel the need to document what's actually going on. But I think this is kind of come about because of what's going on, if that makes sense.
Yep. And do you use Lightroom much? This is a question from James. When you're shooting you're just on your phone, I guess.
Yes, not on my phone. No, I don't. I don't really use anything on my mobile. I'll put a filter on it if it needs it. But...
No, you're an Instagram filter what person? Or
no. Sorry. I mean, I'll tweak the contrast a little bit, but I don't do anything too seriously on my phone.
Throw away all the rules.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the suckers for grading, but not when
Should we dive into your project? Did you have a bit more to show, or?
Yeah. Let me show this, because this relates directly to the demo, and then I can go in.
Yep.
To that.
Sounds great.
So this is a project I did. It was 3 years ago now. And again, going back to the kind of the previous question, this Mars Desert Research Facility in Utah, and I don't remember how I found out about it, but it took 2 years of emailing them and pestering them, and eventually they allowed me to go for a week, and I went and stayed there for a week and documented it. Again, I think this kind of brings together, this is all real. This is exactly how it is and what's there. The idea behind the project, you go and you're supposed to go for 2 weeks. I only did 1, and you live as you would on Mars. And so you can only go outside once a day at a pre-approved time, and you talk to comms who are off-site, and they approve it, and everyone's writing reports every day. And when you go outside, you have to be fully suited, and you have to go through an airlock. And you step outside, and you are just still in the desert in Utah. There's obviously no reason to do any of this, but it's a really, really unique experience. I think it's aimed at enthusiasts and scientists and scientific students, I guess.
So how many people can actually go there? So you go through, so you said you kind of harass them to apply for this, or to go, or was the kind of photography element something that you also obviously pitched to them saying, I'll go and, you know, shoot as much as I can and share this experience? Or
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I think I shared all the photography with them, and they could use it as they wanted. And also I think through my promotion, kind of making awareness of their project. But yeah, I mean, people go there for different reasons, but it is very science-based. Elon Musk has donated to it, and it's run by Robert Zubrin and the Mars Society. So it's very legit, but at the same time, it's a shack that's full of IKEA furniture. It doesn't quite feel like you're on Mars. And the spacesuits obviously don't do anything, but it's for the physical experience.
Is there any test you need to do as part of the kind of authentic experience, or you just kind of go and get suited up and there you go?
You can, yeah, just go and get suited up.
I love that.
Annoyingly, the week I wasn't there for, Jack and Ozzy Osbourne went for a day, but I didn't get to see them.
That's cool.
But I chose this for the demo because I think with most of my photography, it's about being real, and there'll be a grade on it, but certainly won't be massive manipulation or anything. Whereas this is just a slightly heightened reality, if that makes sense. So I mean, there's no elements here that have been added or removed, but there's a much stronger color grade, and it's a bit more playful in that respect. And this is the final shot of what I'm going to do the demo on. So we can jump into that.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
Awesome. Sorry, tell me if I'm talking too much. I feel like I'm just...
Not at all. No, it's great. We love guests who have a lot to share. And people in the chat, please carry on asking questions. We have so much going on. We love seeing you guys every day at 12. So you're here to chat. So please ask away. And Olly's going to keep on going until you ask more questions.
Bear with me, sorry, I've lost you guys in the video. But anyway, okay, so this is the raw file in Lightroom. I'm just going to make a virtual copy of that, and just with this, I'm going to process out 3 different variants, and I'll kind of explain why as I do it. But just so the first thing, I'm just going to up the saturation because I think it kind of needs that, and I think it starts immediately kind of in the landscape, starts feeling alive as you do that. And again, just a bit, warm it up a little bit, and the aim is really to give it that kind of Mars red, which is already kind of there in Utah. Okay, so if we use that as a base, create another copy of that. And it's going to do another one that enhances these blues, so then we can layer that up.
Do you always work with copies?
Yeah, I find it the kind of least destructive way of doing things. So, you know, for the most part, I'll do the final grade in Photoshop. But something like this, I feel if I can do the different elements and lay them over, it's just slightly less destructive than other ways. And so there's more information in the raw file than there'll ever be in anything processed. And so kind of getting that information out of it at this point, I think, is the best way. I mean, that said, with most of my work, because it's less heavily graded, it usually you can do it in one copy. But if there's a burnt out sky, rather than trying to do one exposure in the whole image, I'll do 2 exposures and bring them together in Photoshop. So then the third one is just these, so I'm pointing, these suits obviously are way too saturated there, so I'm just going to bring those down and make them slightly more neutral for the final image. And then the fourth copy is just the raw file, just for the sake of comparison. So I export those out as TIFFs. Hopefully I've set this right. There we go.
What a nice clean desktop you put together for today.
It's entirely pure benefit, I promise.
You're like, it's all a lie.
It absolutely is.
We have a question from James. He's asking, did you decide you didn't like the new Lightroom or haven't moved over yet?
I haven't moved over. I do kind of like to embrace new things, but at the same time, I like the way they work. So it's something I don't think I'll give a try, definitely.
Creatures of habit. We love that.
Actually.
Right, so moving over to Photoshop now.
So we're moving on to Photoshop, sorry, yes. Let me just get these in order. So that's the base. So I'm just going to copy these all into one file. Sorry, I do most of the things in keyboard shortcuts as well, so if you want me to slow down and explain anything, I can do that. So I'm just going to name the layers just for my own.
Just good practice.
And sometimes I don't. They send them over to the retouchers and they hate me. So, okay. So what I generally will do also as I open a new project, not necessarily with something all people based, but something like this, I think is good practice. I like to just, as I'm looking at it, just mark up things that I think are maybe distracting, or some things that need attention. So I think that can come out, that can come out. And I think I find it works for me as kind of decent practice, just to, before you start doing any work, mark up the things that you think might need attention, and then, before you go, otherwise if you just go into it, probably get a bit carried away.
So do you usually work with just viewing the whole picture instead of zooming in?
At this stage, yes. When it comes to making the adjustments, I'll then go into more detail, but I kind of like the overall at this stage. I think that's probably that. Also, just the areas, while I can see them with all these colours, the areas where the land is more naturally blue, that I'll bring out that blue layer in.
We have a question from Nat. She's asking, what are the key things that you look for when composing a picture?
Well, that's a good question.
Is it that natural to you that you can't put it into words?
Yeah, it might. That's the really real cop-out, I'm sorry. It does become second nature. I think there's like a certain way of composing images that sometimes, it's hard to break out of, and sometimes composing images in a different way becomes a challenge because you have certain ways that you do things. I mean, it's always a balance between people and place. I think fundamentally that's what the composition is about for what I shoot. I always have the grids on in the viewfinder, so I like to have level horizons, and often paying attention to thirds, which I think isn't necessarily a thing, but I do think helps. I don't know if it's relevant here, but yeah, I mean, this figure you could probably roughly a third in each way. Yeah, so that helps. That's any kind of answer.
Love the markup process as well. Everyone in the chat is enjoying that. A different way of working.
So this is a big scribble, but when I was initially retouching these, I put these on as an exhibition, and a lot of the way that the exhibition was presented was a very tongue-in-cheek as to like, this is a space experience, but also I did want that kind of boundary between, is this space and why are they wearing such shoddy equipment? So so that green is just to mark up any kind of earthly terrain. It jars with me as a way of trying to present it as Mars. Right, so that's the markup done. I'll reopen the base color. I think I'll start with people here. Yeah. So I'll mask that, invert it. I am not very patient or good at extensive masking, so at my time at college I learned everything on film, and so it's very much kind of a slightly more hand printing approach where everything's a bit loose and everything's kind of, you know, it's not defined lines and whatnot. And I think, you know, after I've done this kind of brushing in, we'll go back, and if there's anywhere obvious that needs tidying up, I'll do that. But, you know, relatively soft brush, fairly low opacity, and just kind of work through it like this. Obviously, these kind of areas going with a smaller brush. And then obviously just keep flicking between the two to see.
How much work was in that series that you've done, in terms of of the shoot? How much did you have actually produce, and how did the whole process? How long did the whole process take?
From this series?
Yeah.
I was there for a week, and it took a week. I think the first day I was so overwhelmed with everything. You know, so the first time we went out in the spacesuits, everything was just bonkers. It was just like I couldn't have imagined it as much as I'd kind of seen vaguely what it was like. Again, sorry, this relates back to what we were saying before, that I didn't do too much research. I went into it with a fairly open mind and didn't really know what to expect. And the first time we went out, it was just mind blowing that this was kind of the aesthetic that we were looking at. And within 30 seconds, the Hasselblad just locked up, and I couldn't take a picture, and it was so frustrating. And because I had the mask on and gloves on, there was nothing I could do to fix it. So I didn't get a single picture on the first day out. So it took the whole week to do the project. And I think the final show on the exhibition was about 20 pictures, which is relatively slow for me, but it was really nice to kind of work in that kind of slightly more indulgent way where there's zero pressure to get anything really. And just see how it evolves. And actually, what I thought I got on day 2, I thought this is it, I've nailed it. And then by day 6, day 2 looked like nothing, because I got more familiar with the people in the environment and kind of knew the intricacies a bit more, so I was paying more attention to the details and just able to kind of achieve more out of it. So that's, I mean, that's a bit shoddy in the masking. Let me just...
There's a question, how long do you spend making adjustments, and when do you know you have finished?
Honestly, if it's a series, I'll spend a long time on the first image. And then generally, if everything's shot in a similar environment, it's a case of kind of dragging layers across and then just tweaking. So the first shot may take a couple of hours, and then after that, it's much more quick. Sorry, this is really bad masking now, but don't judge me.
We're not. No one's judging.
Is the majority of your artwork being published digitally or printed?
I'd say mixed. I mean, this series was in the Portrait of Humanity, which was obviously it was in book form and digital format. I also had this featured in the Science Museum in Dublin, which was amazing because it was I can't remember the name of the exhibition, but there was so much different artwork about human exploration in so many different ways. It was quite the show. But somebody else had been here and did a completely different interpretation of this experience, which was really interesting to see. But for that, I did huge prints, and that was really nice to see as well. I think it's a lot less frequent now that you see things printed, and so when you do, it's very exciting.
So what's your process when your artwork gets printed? Do you do test prints to see how the colors come out, or do you have like a standard scheme by now that you just apply?
Yeah, I mean, mostly with this, I had test prints done and I went up to the printers. But I work with the same printers in London, and so generally I know that they'll get them bang on. And so, you know, if time doesn't allow, it's not too vital because I'm calibrated and they get it. I print my portfolios here, and again, everything touch wood just seems to work. And if they don't, I can tweak and I can just, you know, make minor adjustments if needs be. Right, I think it's a bit rough, but that's the idea. And I'll go on to the blues. So again, just the mask, invert that, and just check. I much prefer to work kind of with like a 30% opacity and just keep going over it rather than anything that's too hard.
James is asking, is there any lighting equipment that is a big go for you? Yeah, a big go for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Profile B1s. They're just so flexible, and you know, a couple in a backpack and you can kind of do anything. I think since they introduced the high-speed sync, power of them didn't matter because you can cancel out the sum of your shutter speed, and then suddenly, kind of most situations, they're just really, really good. And because we're on location a lot, you can't always rely on having mains power and to avoid having cables and whatnot. I think, yeah, they're just really, really flexible.
What kind of projects do you have in store this year then? Given all the changes and traveling, what's kind of exciting in your world?
At the moment, everything's fairly quiet, and yeah. I signed with a US agent at the beginning of the year, which is an exciting new venture for me. And so I'm working with them on kind of, you know, putting things together and working on new promotion, and that, you know, that's a new venture, which is something I can put a lot of time into and really enjoy. I had a few personal projects and a couple of trips lined up, but they're on hold for now.
I like the on hold and not cancelled.
Oh, absolutely.
A bit of optimism.
Absolutely on hold. There's so many places I want to go to photograph it, and so there's always something on the back burner. You know, who knows how long they'll be on hold for, but they're just.
What was on the list, Ollie? Tell us. Make us dream.
Listen, I really wanted to go to Louisiana. I've wanted to go to New Orleans forever. and I'd started doing some research, and oh, you're going to make me sad now.
Oh no, sorry. The point was that we're actually positive and refreshed.
I know, it will happen. It will happen. I kind of mapped this journey. It was 1,000 miles down the Mississippi from St. Louis to New Orleans. I just, yeah. And it's, I mean, I kind of had the start point, the end point, and the main journey, but I didn't really want to research into too much stuff. And so there's always that excitement of just discovering things, and just, you know, there's an opportunity there rather than I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to find this. I think it's always kind of potentially disappointing there, but when you go with it completely blank, it's really exciting. And hopefully it can happen soon, hopefully.
Definitely. And for anyone who's joining us as well, we have a really special session coming up tomorrow where we'll be talking about our creative resident and our new creative fund. So stay tuned. If you also had projects and you want to shout out about this, we'll talk a bit more about it tomorrow. So really exciting session coming up. Please join us again at 12. But yeah, Stephanie, what plans did you have for the year that got cancelled? What was on the list?
Tell you, today is the 5th of May, so I had a flight booked for 16th of May to Malta.
Ooh, Malta.
And of course it got cancelled. Yeah, so that would have been my May holiday.
But I can see you brought it into the house. You have the palm trees feeling and the unicorns that everyone keeps on mentioning in the chat as well.
But that's more, the inspiration is from the Seychelles in the Caribbean where I was before. I haven't been to Malta yet. It was really one of the destinations on top of my list. And it was actually the 4th time I've been trying to go. I just have a curse with Malta.
It's not meant to be.
No.
We have a couple of questions in the meantime with Stuart, who's asking you, Olly, if you're still learning new techniques in software and photography. Is that something that you kind of keep on growing?
Oh, absolutely. I think as the software grows, there's always new things to pick up. I mean, the way I like to use Photoshop is, it's the same way I've liked to use it for a long time, to be honest. I basically use the same kind of 6 tools, but there are always new things to learn, and new things, software and hardware, and just as the industry changes, and yeah, it's good to keep on top of trends as well, I think, as well as software. I do increasingly more video, and despite being on a commercial shoot, we'll have editors and we'll have videographers in and DOPs, but I don't ever feel comfortable just handing that stuff over without understanding the process. So in order to be able to communicate with the editor, I'd like to have some kind of understanding of the software. And so as new things kind of doing different techniques, then it's useful to have a grip of those, I think.
And Jackie's asking if you can describe where the photo was taken again. Some people missed. It's in Utah, and can you tell us a bit more about it?
Oh yes, sorry. So it's in Utah. It's the Mars Desert Research Facility, MDRS, that's run by the Mars Society, and it's a scientific experiment, if you will. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Where you go and experience firsthand what it would be like to live on Mars.
Was it actually a standard to go for 2 weeks, or you can kind of go for how long you want?
No, it's 2 weeks. Every crew goes for 2 weeks, and I just didn't. Didn't really.
Rebellious. You were done after a week. You can't do this anymore.
As brilliant as it was, it was quite boring because there's nothing. Because you can't really do anything. You're stuck in a very, very small habitat, and there's not an awful lot to do. It's great when you go outside, but that's an hour a day. And there's a laboratory, but I didn't know how to use anything. And so it is quite restrictive. And a week, there's an amazing collection of DVDs that every evening we put a film on, but they were all space themed. And Magic Mike for some reason, all space movies and Magic Mike.
Love that. It sounds like you did a pre-test of quarantine with the hour going a day, and the same poor choice of movies.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a question from Nat. She's asking, do you have any tips for using storytelling in photography?
That's a good question again. Again, I think it's like the composition one. I think, I don't know. It's a combination. I think with storytelling, I think, you know, the way a lot of my work is commissioned. Again, it's not the traditional one picture, and so there's multiple pictures to tell one story. And I think, kind of fundamentally, you're always looking for an overall and a detail, and you know, an emotion. And no, this is an awful answer, but it's a combination of things. I think trying to tell, I think I struggle to tell a story in one image, which I know people who are incredible at it, but I think I like to combine different elements to tell a story over a number of images. And I think once you do that, it's quite fun, because you don't have to tell people everything. And I think it's in the kind of spaces where people are given the freedom to join the dots, so to speak, that the kind of the real excitement happens. I guess this is a good example where, when it was presented as these kind of compositions, but in the corner of the exhibition I had a fridge that had the beer in it, but I put a bunch of snapshots all over the fridge of the actual life in the hub and the boring stuff, and actually a shot of the DVD collection, and a shot of one of the crew members just hanging out reading the book, and the real life. And so you kind of tell the story, and it's like, well, we are in space, but we're not. We're in Utah, and we know we're in Utah. And I think it is, I find it fascinating, but I don't really have a very good answer for it. So
We have another
Behind the
question.
scenes insights. Yeah, the behind the scenes insight of giving. Stephanie and I are just on top of each other today. We're like going and going.
That's a problem when you're not sitting together.
Exactly. One day. But go ahead. Questions from the chat first.
Yeah. What kind of paper do you prefer to use when you print your work at home? Weight, gloss, matte, etc.
I use Hanamura because it's 276 GSM. It's double-sided matte paper, and there's not a huge market for double-sided paper, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely beautiful, and the prints again and again just always come out wonderful. It's almost like a watercolor paper. It's really tactile, and there's a really nice texture to it. It's just off-white, and so everything just feels really organic.
And Stuart was asking, are you still learning new techniques in software and photography?
That's the one we were just talking earlier. I think you were saying you keep growing, yeah. But if you had more thoughts about it, please share. Don't drop us a line at midnight, like, oh, actually, guys, storytelling.
So sorry, just back to this. I'm just looking at time. So now I've this top layer, sorry, is a bit shoddy. I would have done that over a lot of different colors, but basically to take the green out, I've just done an overlay of the color, and it's really badly done, but it just to give you an idea. But just for before and after, so that's the raw file, that's graded color, and then so then that's with the additional layers, just bringing a bit more interest. And I'm just going to duplicate those, flatten them again, just to get rid of the things that were marked up in the first place. Again, this is going to show the rough and ready retouching.
What is that? A stone?
I don't know.
Or
I mean, the reason for removing it, I think I have a problem with anything that kind of draws your eye away a little bit. So it's just really kind of to focus on what you're seeing. I think when you have a strange indeterminate black blob, it can just be slightly distracting.
We have Magdalena who's asking what phone you have. You were mentioning that you take some, a lot of pictures straight on your phone when you're out and about. So is that an iPhone? Or?
Yes, iPhone 10. No, XS, 10s, I think. It's got the dog on the back, so I think it's iPhone 10. I don't really do anything fancy with it. It's more just, it's there to document, and I think the ability just to have it all the time is the beautiful thing about it. And actually, I do print some pictures off it. Again, there's a running theme here, but it would largely be of the dog.
I feel like you have all these merch potential. You could open up a shop on your dogs.
I don't have one.
You're looking around.
I don't have one to hand, but I made 300 tote bags with his face on them.
Oh, so it's already happening.
So it is happening. I think the next stage was t-shirts, but we'll get there.
Covering it all.
Yeah. So when I'm tidying up, I use a combination of the clone stamp and healing brush. Sorry, I've got the name. So clone stamp with the softest edges, healing brush with the hardest edges. And it just depends on on what you're doing. I think each has its benefits, but its advantages over the other. So I'm doing what I said I wouldn't do, is just go around randomly. Just need to tidy up the bits that I think I first thought were slightly distracting, rather than, I think by going at 100% and just keep tidying, you end up with nothing left in the picture, and it's counterproductive, I think.
Is that why you first work with seeing the entire picture, so you see where your eyes is drawn to, rather than zooming in and
yes, exactly,
all the little stones all over the place?
Yeah, so when you're at this scale, anything I think could appear distracting when realistically it's not. I just a couple more. So then kind of the final stage would be the overall grade. I mean, I did 99% of everything with just with curves, and then probably a few saturation at the end. I tend to do curves, the luminosity and color separately. So I'll do a curve layer, blending mode as luminosity, and then overall contrast. I mean, a lot of this is done in Lightroom previously, so it doesn't need a huge amount of work, but I tend to process things out slightly flatter than I'd want them in the final image, just so there is a little bit more latitude, a bit more room to play with. And then doing color curves. Again, I'm slightly formulaic with this. I like to put a bit of cyan and a bit of blue into the shadows, and then counterbalance that with the midtones, just going slightly more red. I mean, it's different for every scenario, but in general, I think it's a nice aesthetic where it kind of softens everything, and it keeps the shadows and the highlights kind of separate but quite lively still. Again, it's not a huge difference, but I think that kind of works. And then 1259, the very final stage, I like to put a layer of grain over everything, just to kind of take out any kind of digital artifacts and bad retouching. So overlay 50% grey, and then zoom in 100%, preferably where somewhere it's sharp, and just add a monochromatic noise. Somewhere around there, and then just blur it ever so slightly. And again, depending on the scenario, I sometimes, you know, you can play with duplicating the layer and maybe putting something on hard light so it's far more prominent on the shadows, and then dialing back the opacity on both of them so you've got a bit of variety. And then with the scale, so the noise is ever so slightly bigger. But just to get an idea, I don't know if this is translating over Zoom, but I think it just gives it slightly more tactile quality. And in half an hour, that's the raw file, the first process, and then potentially final image.
Brilliant. How
Very
satisfying.
interesting.
And you're right on the dot, Ollie, which is amazing. Look at you, so organized. No, thank you so much. Any final words on the series and your work and what's kind of coming up in your world?
No, just thanks so much to anyone who's tuned in, and I hope it's been like slightly interesting, slightly useful. And I've really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
No, thanks for joining. You made us travel a little bit. It was Mars, you know, we had Captain Tony last Friday, and we're all kind of traveling to new places. So this was great to see. And Stephanie, thanks for joining and being back. Welcome back to this other week.
Thanks.
Any final words?
Ollie. Yeah, thanks community for the good questions, and definitely thanks Ollie for showing your amazing pictures and your process, and for taking us on this virtual travel tour. It's been amazing.
Brilliant. It was a great lunchtime break. And thanks everyone in the chat as well for tuning in. We love having you from 12 to 1 every day. And as I said, tomorrow will be quite the session. We have a special announcement and exciting news from the Adobe Live world with our Creative Fund. So please tune in and find out a bit more on how you can get involved. So stay tuned and see you all tomorrow at 12.
Bye.
Bye.